Well, back in my day, every young man, his mother was the best cook ever. And so uh, when we got married, I was a fairly good cook. I mean, my mother, as far as I was concerned, was the best cook ever. And Richard had no complaints. And after we'd been married for several months, I said to him, "So how's my cooking?" And he said, "Oh, your cooking's great." And I says, "Anything that I should improve?" And he said, "Well, you don't make gravy like my mom." And I said, "I don't make gravy like your mom?" He said, "No." So I said, "Okay." So that was kind of left at that. So anyway, he said, or I decided that I would find out how his mother made gravy. And so when we went up to visit, I said to her, I need to find out how you make gravy. Richard says, "I don't make gravy like you make gravy. So will you give me some lessons?" And she says, "Sure." So she showed me how she made gravy, and I went home and I practiced and I practiced. And after several more months, I said to him, "Well, do I make gravy like your mom makes gravy?" And he said, "No, not there yet." I said, "Oh, okay." So anyway, I said, "You better have another lesson or two." So she showed me again how to make her gravy, and I came home and I practiced and I practiced. And so months later, I said to him, "Well, how's my gravy? Is it, am I making gravy like your mom makes?" "No, you're still not." And I said, "Well, I've done everything your mom said to do. She's given me instructions, and I've done everything she showed me how to do. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong." I said, I know I'm doing it the way she said." So I said, "What's the difference?" And he said, "Well, hers has lumps and yours doesn't." And the difference was my mom taught me to make gravy without lumps, and his mom made gravy with lumps. So, lumpy gravy or plain gravy, gravy's gravy, but I didn't make gravy like his mom made gravy. Dale wanted me to talk about our first date. And our first date was to the Harvest Ball at South High School. And Richard borrowed his dad's car, and we lived on, it was called Albemarle Avenue. And it was a street that ran off of West Temple west to Jefferson Street. But as far as an avenue, it was more of an alley than an avenue. And it had potholes that would collect water when it rained or snowed. And it had this harvest dance was in the fall, early winter. And the potholes were full of water, which had frozen. And Richard came to pick me up, and we had a front door and a back door, which were only 10 paces apart. And he came to the back door where the gate was at. And we invited him in, and of course, we were making pickled herring. So we had all kinds of onions and spices and smells in the house that he definitely wasn't used to. But anyway, we went out, and as I rounded the back of the car so he could let me in to the seat, I hit a patch of the ice in the puddle, and I slipped and I fell and almost went directly under the car. I was just, my shoulders and chest were sticking out. And he said, "Once you were there and the next minute you weren't." He said, "I thought you'd done a disappearing act." And I was so embarrassed I could have died. First date, and then something like that. He was no bigger than a minute. I didn't know whether he'd get me off the ice or not, but he did. He managed. And I was afraid my dress had gotten ruined with the moist snow and stuff, but it took it okay, and we went to the dance and had a good time, and that was it. Oh, other than when we were at the dance, we had as we danced, most dances where you held each other. You didn't dance freestyle like they dance now. It was you were in their arms, and I'd had surgery on my left eye, and it was very sensitive, and I'd taken my glasses off trying to look beautiful for a dance and a date, and so I'd taken my glasses off, and as we were dancing, he would say words that were puffy words like Paul and put that thing there, or puh. And every time he puffed, I would jerk because my eye was sensitive. He thought I had some kind of a tick. And I had one time it was a bad enough jerk, he said, "Are you okay?" And then I had to explain to him what the problem was. And he got a good giggle out of that. But we had a good time at the dance, slipping under the car with the ice and all. But that's how first dates go sometimes. Okay.
All right.
All right. First kiss. We went together for, if I remember right, it was about 3 years before Richard finally kissed me. And after the first year, I got to thinking, what am I doing wrong? And after the second year, I really kind of got worried, and I thought, okay, I didn't have an onion sandwich before I dated him, and I thought I brushed my teeth, and I thought I was sitting close enough, and he still hadn't kissed me. So when he finally kissed me, it was a peck on the lips and out the door as fast as he could go to get to the other side of the car to let me out. So, and I thought, did he really kiss me or didn't he? And then I learned the story behind the kiss. It seems like for all that time that we waited until he finally got the courage to kiss me, he had been practicing with his mother. Not that he would actually kiss her, but that he had to make sure he was able to get his arm around her without poking her in the eye or knocking her in the head, using her like back seat of the car, so he could get his arm over her and put his arm around her so that he could be in the position to give me the kiss. And he finally got it to the point where he felt comfortable in putting his arm over the seat and drawing me close enough to give me a kiss. His mother said she always knew when he'd given me the first kiss because he stopped doing it. And she said, "I missed that." And I said to him, "Why did it take so long?" And he said, "Well, it had to be in the car because every time I took you to the door to say goodnight, you'd shut the gate in back of you." And he says, and it had a picket on the top of it. And I didn't want to pick it in my gut. Poor guy. And I had no idea that I was the reason why he wasn't giving me a kiss. Mother had always said, make sure you shut the gate before you come in so that the dogs don't come in the yard. And I was just doing what my mother told me to do. But it warded off a kiss all those years. But anyway, it worked out all right. He did give me a good kiss later on. Dale wants me to tell you about our honeymoon. And we went to Yellowstone on our honeymoon, and I was laying there in bed and had my head on Richard's chest, and as I got up, I brushed my hair off of his chest, and there was one that didn't brush, and I reached down and pulled it, and it was attached, and it was his one and only hair that he'd been babying for years. And I pulled out his one and only hair. Very unsuccessful honeymoon. Anyway, poor guy, he put up with a lot. So here it is, Christmas time, and that was Richard's favorite season of the year was Christmas. He loved Christmas. And as we got preparations and had started having children, and we just felt like you needed to get up otherwise and get dressed, otherwise you're in your jammas the whole day. And with family coming and guests coming, it seemed like there was never a time to get dressed. And so it was, and my family, it was you got up and you had breakfast, because otherwise you would never get around to eating something good all day long. So, but I don't know whether it was a family tradition of Richard's family or what, but anyway, he wanted the boys to get dressed. So they would get dressed, and we usually had some kind of a breakfast, but not necessarily before we opened presents. But like I said, Christmas was his favorite time, and he was the one that did the shopping. He was just like a kid. He just loved Christmas. And his favorite place to store Christmas was in the trunk of the car. And he would, at the time, our stake center was the church that we met in. And he would go over, because he was stake executive secretary, and be there for the meetings that they had. And when he wasn't involved in the meeting, he would go out and he would bring in Christmas presents and test drive them, usually like remote cars and remote Jeeps or whatever it was, up and down the halls of the church. And the guys from the High Council said that was just the best time. They found out what they wanted and what they didn't want for Christmas because of Richard's demonstrations. But he enjoyed Christmas, and he felt like we needed to dress up so that we looked nice for Christmas and didn't look scroungy and grungy. And then we would line up at the end of the hall, oldest to the youngest, and come down in the hallway, and he would take picture of us coming down the hallway to celebrate Christmas.
Take video?
Yep, take a video. Yeah, he had videos. He'd take videos. So, anyway, that was Christmas. Well, we had an aquarium that he had as a kid, and we had it sitting in the kitchen, and it caught the light from the sliding glass door, so the algae formed really quick. And it had got to the point that it looked like the swamp. And I told him that it needed to be cleaned for Christmas. And in the meantime, I covered it over with a tablecloth because it looked so yucky. And so just a few nights before or night before, I don't remember exactly how close, but it was close to Christmas, he fished out all the fish from the fish pond from the swamp and put them in an ice cream bucket with some water and sat it aside so that he could clean out the aquarium. And in multitasking, he decided to burn some boxes from downstairs, and we had a fire in the fireplace. And so he shoved these boxes into the fireplace, and in the process of doing so, it shut the flue. And so the smoke came pouring out and billowing into the room, gagging everybody. And of course, with that came the flame up the front of the fireplace. And of course, he panicked. And, you know, what do I do? What do I do? And the closest thing was the bucket with water with the fish in it. And he threw that on the fireplace to put the fire out. And here are these poor little fishes flopping around on the hearth. And I can't remember which one of the boys said, "Oh, my fish." And I thought, "Oh, my house." Anyway, we got the flue open and the fire was out, and then it was clean the poor dead fish off the fireplace. And of course there was the smoke covered brick from the smoke, and he looked at it and he said, "Honey, can you fix that?" And it seemed like that was the question everybody was asking. "Mom, can you fix this? You know, honey, can you fix this?" The next door neighbors would say, "Deanna, can you fix this?" So then came the job of cleaning the brick on the front of the fireplace to try to make it so that it looked decent. And eventually the smoke and the smell left the room, but it took a while. But that was a memorable Christmas. Talking more about the fireplace, one summer the kids were out of school and had the roller skates and been roller skating on the carport and down the driveway, and Dale came in through the sliding glass door into the kitchen with his roller skates on and across the carpet on the floor, and was losing his balance. And as he reached up and grabbed the mantle of the fireplace, and in so doing, it was loose. We didn't know it. And with him losing his balance, it jarred, and the mantle fell onto the hearth and broke in, I think, at least 3 pieces. And
How old was
he was probably 8, 9 years old. Just a young kid, one of those things that happens that, you know, and of course, and the interesting thing was, there had been something thrown on the hearth. I thought it was a coat. I don't know what it was, but it was soft. And I had my chocolate pitcher that Grandma Titi had brought from Prussia, that is over 200 years old, sitting on the mantle with some other things. There was a lacquer plaque from Japan that Paul had brought, plus this chocolate pitcher. And that chocolate pitcher landed on top of the jacket or the whatever it was that was soft and didn't have a chip in it. But the lacquer plaque that I had so many chips. Oh, there was also a lacquer vase that I ended up having to throw away. That, you know, but the real valuable one was saved. So when Richard came home, we put back the pieces, and there weren't any pieces missing. They were all big enough that they fit together, and just as long as you just left them there, they were okay, but nobody was to touch it. Root cellar started when Richard decided he wanted to have a greenhouse. And he was really into the idea of a greenhouse, and then it was, well, if we have a greenhouse, we might just as well put in a root cellar underneath of it so that, we could keep, vegetables and stuff colder down there. So he enlisted the boys to help him dig out the pit for the root cellar. And in the process of doing it, they kept digging up this hard rock. I mean, it was like in a layer, and it was hard. And as they would rinse it off or chip it off, they saw that it had tiny, like snail shells, like seashells in it. And they thought, well, that's strange why we got stuff like that here. So anyway, they kept, boys were energetic and they kept digging. And so Richard decided he was going to take some of this rock up to the University of Utah and find out what it was called. So I'm not sure which building he took it to. But anyway, he took a chunk of this up to the University of Utah, and the guy looked at it and he said, "That's calcarea tufa." Richard said, "Okay, what's calcarea tufa?" It's called hardpan, is the generic name for it. And then he told us that the West Valley, Kearns, Magna area had all been a warm spring at one time at the bottom of a lake, or whether it was at the bottom of the lake or close to the lake edge or whatever it was, it had been a warm spring area, and it had deposited through the years of it building up was this snails and seashells and sediment and stuff that became like cement. And that's what they were digging through. So we saved several chunks of it, and when you washed it off and cleaned it up, you could see it almost looked like coral in a way. But calcarea tufa.
You use that to decorate his ponds too, right?
He used some of it, yeah. Not a lot. We went rock hunting to do the ponds and the...
How deep was the pit we dug?
Oh, I think it was at least 5 feet, if not 6 feet deep. You think it was deeper than that?
Probably closer to 10.
Anyway, it was deep.
I have a big ladder to get in and out of it.
And we did have some shelves that we, could put stuff on down there. So, and then once he got the greenhouse built, then we decided, okay, we needed something. So he built a sand pile with a playhouse on the top of it for the on stilts, so that the kids were in the shade when they played in the sand pile, and yet they had a tree house or clubhouse that they could meet in on stilts. So kids had a good time. When Richard was in this building mood, he decided he wanted to have some ponds. He liked the sound of the running water, and so he decided that he would build ponds in the front yard and in the backyard. So he found out how to make his own fiberglass, because it wasn't as popular as it is now.
How did you learn how to do that?
Read some books, self-help books, and found out how to shape it and make it with his own fiberglass, and how he could tint it blue and use baby powder with talc and stuff like that in the stuff to keep it so that it stuck to the fiberglass or whatever. I don't remember all, but he had to dig the hole the size he wanted, and then he had to line it with stuff, and then he had to put this liquid stuff on it, and with and then paint it with this blue stuff that had talc in it. So it was quite a process that he had to go through to make it. And then it was to find the rocks that he wanted to be able to make it so that it was like a real fountain with rocks and flowers. And so we started our hunt for rocks. We'd go up the canyons, and we didn't have a truck then, so we'd go up the canyons, and as we would drive past, oh, that one's, and he'd stop the car and get out, and either his own self or get the boys to help him, and we'd lift the rocks into the trunk of the car. We'd probably get arrested for doing something like that now. Old mine sites and that we'd go to, and he found some place where they had some lava rock that he could, I think he bought the lava rock, but otherwise it was stuff that we picked up. Went to Topaz Mountain with a wheelbarrow, up the mountain, down the mountain, with this wheelbarrow full of rocks for the fountain. And sometimes when he didn't feel good, and we'd lay there at night, and he had it on a timer, the sound of the water running was the only thing that would kind of help ease him into sleep when he didn't feel good. So, and once the front was done, then he worked and did the backyard, and it got to the point where the front yard looked like a park. It was so pretty with flowers and the fountain and lighting, and he did a beautiful job making our home beautiful. Okay, got a request from Alan not to forget the Pinewood Derby. Pinewood Derby season was kind of hectic around our house. And it seemed like, I mean, the boys were supposed to make their cars, and Richard wanted to make sure that they did that. And with his help, and, you know, the filing of the axles, and the using of graphite, and the, you know, melting lead to make them so they weighted the way they were supposed to be, and painting them. And it seemed like sometimes the paint jobs were always left till the last. Either that or too much was put on all at once, and then they were sticky. And there was one time when it was so sticky that we had to scrape it off. And the deadline was like 2 hours away, you know, get your car done and get it over there. And so we'd scraped all the paint off, but it had that it had kind of left a coloration in the wood. And so it was, what can we do to put on this car so that it's looks like it's been painted? And the only thing I could think of was to use food coloring. So we turned the oven on low, put food coloring on the car, set it on a cookie sheet, set it in the car or in the oven, and dried the food coloring to the point where the car could be entered in the race, because there was not time to put a coat of paint on it. And then there was the other time when he was involved in stake activities, and he wasn't feeling well, and it was deadline, and we had to get this car done, and had to get the weights, the area drilled for the weights, and he told us where they had to be. And so I put the car in my hand, took the drill and drilled into the car, and went right through the top of the car into my palm of my hand with the drill. And I thought, okay, I don't know how many more Pinewood Derbies I can survive, but we survived it.
Choice words?
Probably some choice words, yeah.
Sweet.
But anyway, the car was
Is it blood?
There was blood, yeah. But the car was finished and the car was entered and
painted.
then this car had paint on it.
Blood. It's the Reaper.
Anyway, Pinewood Derbies.